Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Stamperia Blue Dream mini album tutorial designed for Scrap and Create. In this tutorial, we're going to begin building page 1 of the album, starting with the front and then moving on to the back. Before I begin page 1, I want to make a correction to what we did in the previous video when we finished building the pages. So I went through and labeled all of my pages front and back, but I had all of my hinges opening to the left-hand side, not thinking that some of the hinges are on the right-hand side as well because it's a gatefold. So I've taken page 2, page 4, and page 6. I had them this direction, so they were opening here. I turned each of them around, so now my opening is on the right-hand side for those hinges. So I've just erased this and put my page 2, page 4, page 6, the font in the correct orientation. So now all of these are going to be on the right-hand side. So just something that you might want to do now so that you don't accidentally build your pages the incorrect way and then go to put them in the album and have to flip them over because they're not in the right orientation. For page 1, I'm going to use this paper as my inspiration for the front of this page. And I need to actually cut into this paper now so that I can make this correct. So I'm actually going to be cutting this paper here and around the bottom of the clock and across here so that this is going to be the top flap that's going to open up, but then this is going to be the closure that's going to go on the bottom, which we're going to turn into a pocket. So this is actually going to be cut out of the top flap. So I do need to use this now so that I can cut my flap correctly. So I'm just going to do this with my scissors. If you prefer to do this with a craft knife, you can do that. We're going to cut straight across on these blocks here, and then on the outer edge of this darkest circle for the clock, I'm just going to go around and cut this around the curve until it meets those other two blocks on the opposite side. And then I'm going to cut straight across here and remove these. So now I have my two pieces. Now I'm going to set aside the bottom piece for now, and I'm going to use a piece of cardstock that is 8 1/4 inches wide and 7 inches high. I'm going to place this in my scoreboard so that the 7-inch side is along the top, and I'm going to score at 1/2 inch. Next, I'm going to take my bone folder and fold on this score line to create my tab. Then I'm going to take this piece and when it's on the page here like this, you'll notice that there's not a whole lot of room here. So rather than have this be a strange cut, so instead of it being 7 1/8 of an inch, I'm just going to take a little tiny bit off of the top of this with my paper trimmer. So it doesn't need to be a lot. It's not even 1/8 of an inch. So just a little tiny sliver basically needs to come off of this. So you can see just this little tiny piece. And then that's going to allow this to have a more uniform border around the sides here. I'm actually going to adhere this down now to my paper, and then I'm going to cut around this to form that bottom part of the flap. I've added my piece to my paper. I remembered to use my ink right at the last minute, so don't forget to ink your edges if you are planning to use ink. Now to cut this, you can use your scissors and just cut along this, or you can draw a line first and then cut it. I'm just going to take my scissors and cut it But if you don't think that you can cut this relatively straight, by all means, use a ruler, draw a straight line here, and then draw a curve so that you can just follow along with your scissors and cut. I know for some people it's really hard to just cut without a line, and it can be easier if you have that guide. So if you need to do that, go ahead and do so. So now I have my piece cut out and it's ready to go on the page. So I can go ahead and bring my page in, making sure that I have it in the correct orientation. And this flap is going to go here, right at the top of the page. So I'm going to add my adhesive to my 1/2 inch flap, or my 1/2 inch tab on the back of my flap. And I'm going to line this up with the top edge of the paper, and then it should be straight on the sides as well. So now I have my first flap. I'm going to add another flap down here at the bottom for this piece here, and it's going to be a pocket. For this piece, I need to cut one piece to 4 inches high, 8 1/4 inches wide. I'm going to put the 4-inch side across the scoreboard and score it 1/2 inch. Once I have this scored, I'm going to fold my tab over and burnish this down. You'll notice that I did not leave room on the sides to make tabs for my pocket because I want this to be a tighter pocket. There's not going to be a lot of space between my pages, so I don't want to have too much stuff in there that's going to actually take up too much space. So I'm going to be placing this flap down, and then once I get my decorative paper on here, I'll be gluing my sides down to form my pocket. So I am going to first put my adhesive on my 1/2 inch tab section and adhere this down at the bottom of the page. I'm going to flip this over. Make sure everything is lined up, and then I'm going to press this down and burnish it. Now, while this is still open, I'm going to write down here, pocket. This helps me to know when I go to put this decorative paper on that I wanted to make this a pocket, so then I will seal this shut. Sometimes if I have too much stuff going on, if I'm busy doing other things or working on a lot of projects at once, I don't always remember what I want to do with things whenever I go to decorate my albums, so I just make little notes for myself like that. Now this piece is going to go on the front here, but we're going to make this another pocket too. So there's going to be a pocket here and a pocket here. But we're going to need to have some decorative paper back here. And I'm just going to use some of the plain cardstock to put in there because I'm going to have a decorative photo mat in there, so you're not really going to see a whole lot of it. Now I have my darker shade of cardstock that I'm using. I'm going to cut one piece down to 2 inches, and then I'm going to cut this down to 8 inches. So I have a piece that's 2 by 8. And that is going to go here on this back side, just like this. Once my piece is on, I need to make a closure on this piece before I place this down. So I am going to use my ruler. First, I'm going to place the piece where it goes on the page. I'm going to set my ruler down here and mark the center of my page right in here in this white border strip. And it ends up being this one. You can see where it is in the center here. And it is about 3/8 of an inch up from the bottom. I'm going to pierce a hole in my paper, and I'm going to place a swing tab here. So I've got my hole, and then I'm going to use one of my little ephemera pieces. So I'm going to use the lemons, and I'm going to back this on cardstock. Because it is a sticker, it has adhesive on the back. I'm going to peel that off and place it right down on a piece of cardstock to strengthen this up so that it's a little bit stronger. And once it's down on the paper, I'm going to use my scissors. I'm going to leave a small border around this. I'm going to make sure that the edges are rounded, even where there's some of the pointier places with the leaves. I'm going to keep everything rounded so that it doesn't catch on anything whenever this opens and closes in my album. So now I have my lemon piece. I'm going to place my paper right back on the page. I'm going to close this flap and put my lemon piece over the hole that I just punched, and it's going to be pretty straight up and down here. I want to catch this so that the leaves catch the blue in the clock. That way everything will be underneath of there whenever the page is closed. It'll hold that down. So I've got my hole here in the bottom of my lemon, and it is about 1/4 of an inch from that end part or the tip of the lemon. I'm going to insert a brad right through there. Then I'm going to take my paper and insert the brad through the paper and extend those prongs on the back side. Place the piece of paper back in position where it goes, and then swing this up and make sure before we put this on that it catches. If it doesn't catch that tip of the paper, then you need to either move your paper up a little bit, move it down, or move your lemon and pierce another hole. So mine is good, which means I can go ahead and apply this down. Before I do though, I'm going to flip this over on the back side. What I like to do to secure the prongs of my brad so that they don't swivel and move, I take a piece of masking tape. I just have black masking tape. You can use whatever type of tape you have as well. Just don't use double-sided tape here. Just put a piece of tape over those prongs, and then they won't move, but the piece will still swivel and move. And now for this piece, remember it's going to be a pocket, so I am only going to be adding my adhesive to my sides and to the bottom edge. So I'm going to add adhesive to about 1/4 inch, basically where that maroonish red color part is on the paper, and then about 1/4 inch across the bottom. And then I'm going to apply this to my page and use my bone folder to smooth this down. I like to start in the middle and work outwards so that there's not any puckering in the pocket in the middle. Everything will lay nice and flat that way. So now we have our pocket here. This will be a pocket later. Swing this down, close this, and then that will swing close to keep our flap closed in the album. Next, we're going to cut 2 pieces of cardstock to 4 5/8 inch by 6 inches. These are going to be flaps on the inside here and here. So we're going to need to use the scoring board to score both of these on the sides. So placing the 6-inch side along the scoring board, score 1 piece on the right-hand side and score the 2nd piece on the left-hand side. I'm actually going to turn it this way. It'll just be upside down. That way I don't have to erase that pencil. So we have our 2 flaps. We are going to fold on those score lines and burnish. Now we're going to place these right in the center here. 1 on each side, lining them up so that they're straight across and straight up against these edges. So I'm just going to take my first one and apply my adhesive on that 1/2 inch tab. And then I am going to place this right here in the center, making sure it is straight with that edge of the paper. And then I will add my adhesive to my 2nd flap. I'm going to line these edges up first and then back this piece up to the edge. Lay it down, make sure that it is straight. And then I'm going to burnish this down. So now I have my 2 flaps, my 2 pockets, and my swing tab closure. For the back of page 1, I'm going to be using this paper. Now what I thought I would do during this series is show you how I'm actually deciding what I'm going to put on my pages and how I'm designing. And with this specific paper collection, I'm taking the actual page that I want to use and I'm fitting my elements to what I want to do with a specific piece of paper. I don't always design this way. A lot of times I will just design the pages and then pull the papers and make it fit. But for these specific ones, because they have such a large scene, most of Stamperia papers are like that, I want to make sure that I do them justice. So for this piece, I'm going to leave it so you can see the whole entire piece on my front, but I'm going to be cutting this. So with that in mind, I have my first piece of paper here, 5 3/4 by 8 1/4 inch. And I'm going to take this and put the 5 3/4 inch side up against my scoreboard. And I'm going to score 1/2 inch on the left hand side. Then I'm going to take a second piece, 3.5 inches by 8.25 inches. I'm placing the 3.5 inch side up against the scoreboard, scoring at 1/2 inch on the right hand side. Next, I'm going to take my bone folder and fold over on both of my tabs. Make sure that I burnish these down so that they're nice and crisp. I can't stress how important it is to do this in albums. This is what helps the flaps to lay flatter when they are closed. So it just makes the whole entire album less bulky as well because you're condensing as much of it as you can. So now I have my pieces. What's going to happen is I'm going to adhere this large one to the left side and the small one to the right side of the page. This is going to get split and cover these. This is going to be a pocket. This is going to be a flap, and I'm going to have one of my Graphic 45 tags tucked here into the top, over top of my flap and into my pocket, and this will be the closure for the flap. So when you pull that out, then you'll be able to open your flap. So I'm first going to adhere down my larger flap, placing my adhesive all on that 1/2 inch tab section. And just like on the front of my page, I'm going to make sure that the left edge is lined up with this left side of the page. And then also making sure that it's lined up with the top and the bottom so that everything is straight. Then I'm just going to burnish this down. And now we have our flap. We can move on to the pocket. Now we need to make sure that this pocket fits on the page. So I'm going to actually flip that flap up for a minute. This is the edge of my page, and this is where this flap closes. So it's actually overlapping slightly. So what I'm going to do is take my flap or my pocket to my paper trimmer, and I'm just going to trim off a little bit. Again, not even 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/16 of an inch. And then I'm going to place this back on my page. And now you'll see that I've got this straight, everything goes together. It doesn't overlap at all. If you want, you can also trim off a little bit from here too. It'll make it a little easier to tuck the tag in, but I think it should be fine how it is. Just make sure that there isn't an overlap in your pieces. That way you can tuck everything in nice and easily. So once your piece is cut correctly, add your adhesive to your tab and then adhere this to the right side of the page. I'm going to open this up and place it right against this edge here. Then I'm going to close this back down and then make sure that it still closes okay, and make sure that everything is lined up top and bottom, and then I'm going to burnish this down. So now we have this flap on. Again, I'm going to write pocket here so that I know later I'm going to be placing adhesive here and here and then placing this down. Then when that's down, I'll be able to stick my tag in here and still be able to see that image on the page. So we'll still be able to see this, and then I'll have my tag here that'll be decorative. Now I'm not going to be adding the paper now. I will be decorating the paper. I'll be putting decorative paper on later, so I'm just going to leave it like this. And I'm not going to do anything else to this piece for now because I'm going to have another photo mat tucking in here. So there will be a photo mat here, and then you'll have photos here. This will close, and then there will be the tag here, So there's plenty of interaction on these pages. And remember, we've only got 1/4 inch between the pages, so I'm trying not to add too much bulk. And these tags, unfortunately, with the grommet in them, they are kind of thick already, so I'm going to just be leaving my page just like this. So this is all for the build for page 1 front and back. In another video, we will be decorating using our Blue Dream papers, but everything's going to be separate. So building pages and then decorating the pages. And we're going to continue in the tutorial series in the next video, building page 2. Then we'll do 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we'll come back and decorate all of those pages. So stay tuned for the next video in the tutorial series. And if you are new and just joining us, don't forget to head to scrapandcreate.com to pick up the Blue Dream papers. Everything is linked in the description box below.